Hello and welcome to Bussy's podcast. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and follow my Instagram and Facebook pages to find out who my next guest will be and when my next podcast goes live. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to Bussy's podcast. Today I'm joined by Josh Higgon. Josh has gone through a bit of grief in his life, losing his younger brother to cancer, and now you're dealing with it really well by using Strongman competitions to deal with it.
Yeah.
But how are you today, mate? You alright today?
Oh, not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Obviously, from the start, mate, how was growing up for you in terms of normal before?
Normal life. Well, obviously, you go to school, you're learning, and you're going about everyday life, playing football, finding out who your favourite football team is.
Yeah.
Which we
disagree on.
Yeah. Obviously, the wrong United you support, right?
Yeah, I'm Leeds United. You're Man United.
Yeah. But yeah, so growing up for me was very normal. I had a loving family and got everything that sort of every child wants growing up. New football boots, new football, go out playing with my mates, doing all the everyday life. And then obviously my little brother was born, and sort of went from there really. Made him support Man United because that's what brothers do. Favourite players were Rooney and Ronaldo, and we sort of, I then had a best mate as well that I could play football with, and not just my school friends. I had a brother that was also my best friend, so that just made it twice as better really. And then we just carried on from there. School obviously progressed. I was going into like secondary school growing up. Started to become a little bit chubby back in the day. And then like obviously you get your exam, like obviously the pressures of like you start growing up, like learning new things and seeing different aspects of life and growing as obviously a person as well. And then obviously when I become 10 or 12 years old, I was out playing football with just out after school. I think it was like an after school football thing that was on, and I got told by a family friend at the time that I was going to go home with them because my brother had been ill for a few weeks at this point, and he'd gone down to, my mum had been taking him in and out of the doctors just to see like obviously what was up with him and whether or not, because what was going on wasn't normal. He was like throwing up a fair bit, and the doctors obviously thought at first that it was a cold or like a flu or etc. But my mum was like, this isn't Jack, because it had been going on for a couple of weeks now, and it wasn't like Jack to be ill for very long. And that was when he got rushed. That he was at Scunthorpe Hospital at first, and then he got sent down to Sheffield Children's Hospital, where they found out that he had a medulloblastoma, which is a rare form of brain tumour that's only in kids. And that was then when they had to operate on his brain to try and remove the tumour out of his head and his body. And from then on it was sort of like a domino effect. From there it was, we carried on going through chemotherapy with Jack, and from obviously my standpoint I couldn't be there at every time that he was going through everything. And the short time I got to spend with him was inside hospital as well, during periods of chemotherapy and things like that. So it was quite tough trying to keep focused on school life, and trying to learn new things, grow up as yourself. When you've also got, obviously I didn't quite understand the severity of what Jack was going through at the time. I obviously knew he had cancer, and it's not just an everyday illness. Like it's like one of the biggest killers in the world, if not the biggest. So I obviously knew what he was going through. It isn't normal for most people, never mind a child of 6 years old. So it was quite difficult, like not only being away from Jack, but being away from my mum and dad, because obviously they spent a lot of time with Jack at the hospital, to and from, and then my dad was also working at the time, so it was quite hard with that aspect as well. But seeing Jack go through what he went through and still being the person that he was before his illness was like even more inspiring, because he's going through something that he doesn't know it's obviously like taking that much of a toll on his body, but he's going through, like, now at this point a few months on, he's going through radiotherapy, because now they've done all that they can do with the chemo. So he's sat there listening to Queen, and they sort of have like it's going to sound like really terrible, but it's like a plastic, it goes round the head, and it's plastic, and they literally bolt you in to the radiotherapy chair. Well, it's not really a chair, but it's like if you've been in a hospital before, it's like a table, and it's a bit like a massage table, but then you like get, obviously because he's 6, well, not 6 at this point, he was 4.5, maybe 5, and obviously because they didn't want him moving about, they had to sort of like strap him down a little bit. And he was listening to his favourite song at the time, well, favourite band, he had it on, like, the album, it was Queen, and he was still singing to the song and laughing about it, even though he was having this laser beam shot through his head, and it'd leave scars, like, all over his head. And I remember another little story. We were sat at home, me and my mum was in the front room, and Jack was obviously in his bedroom, and he was playing about with the scar. He have like a shunt on the back of the head which stops the fluid from getting to the brain, and he was like picking at the scalp, and he messed about and wiped on the wall. He was like, "What is that?" It was like, "Obviously, Jack, what are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I just realised I've got a scab on the back of my head." Yeah, so it's obviously inspired me, like, not only in like the story that he had, but then like going forward in life to never really give up, as much as life can get you down, and you can be at like the lowest of the low.
Because how did you deal with that at such a young age? How did it make you grow up faster, or?
Yeah, I think at the time I was grown up in a sense of I knew how bad life could be, but also I still wanted to be a child, still wanted to be young.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I was still at school, I still wanted to have fun and have a laugh, and I never wanted to, but then I also knew how difficult life could get, which at that age is sort of a bit like, well, it's a bit weird.
It's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, like growing up now, like it's made me realise how grown up I was back then. But during this was the time during my exams, my granddad was really pushing for me to go forward in terms of weightlifting. Obviously at 16 you're not really supposed to be inside the gym. My granddad himself has been through cancer. Yeah, granddad had leukemia. So obviously he knew somewhat of what Jack went through, and also knew how it was affecting me, because he was on he was going through grief himself for Jack as well. So he was also like trying to take my mind off the effects of what the exams could be putting me through, by giving me something in weightlifting, and also like obviously grief and etc. Like how you could put that into weightlifting and sort of turn it into something that can push you to a next level sort of thing, in terms of dealing with it.
So obviously your granddad helped you with all your grief and stuff, but you also had good times as well with your brother, lots of memories with him.
Yeah, definitely. Respect, that was a good thing. Like he obviously got going a little bit of a bad thing first. He only got given the weekend to live when obviously we come back from hospital, but he ended up surviving for 6 months, so we got to do a lot of stuff that we wouldn't have obviously got to do in a weekend. We got to go to see the players trainer at Carrington, Man United obviously. So that was an amazing experience. Like they treated us amazingly there for the day. Got to meet all the players, obviously watch them train, and how the champions trained at that time. Do you know what I mean? So it was good that day. Jack got to see his favourite player, which is obviously Rooney at the time, and he idolised Rooney, and I sort of idolised Jack the way that he idolised Rooney. So that was like a real good experience, and just seeing the smile on his face when Rooney walked over, and that instant connection that they both had, just because obviously he supported United and got to see his favourite player, which was amazing. We got to also go and see Jack Wilshere down at Arsenal. We got to watch a few of the Arsenal games with Jack. All stuff that like is obviously great.
Because he went through a similar thing, didn't he, Jack Wilshere? He lost his uncle who was a similar age.
Yeah.
Was it a car crash?
I think it was a car accident.
Yeah, and he obviously was going through a similar thing with him losing. That's where you got that connection with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. Jack was very close to us. A lot of followers from Twitter that we gained, and Jack had messaged Jack's page that my mum used to run, and had sort of been messaging back and forth, and it was in a period of time where Jack was he wasn't able to function or walk at this point, so it was difficult. Sorry, I itched my nose. Sorry about that. So it was sort of difficult to try and find a day where Jack was sort of in a good spot, so we could go see them. we also we also got to see Serena Williams as well, through Twitter, and it's sort of things that we got to experience that are completely out of the ordinary, in such a short space of time that we can look back on. Well, me, myself and my family can look back on, and sort of appreciate that period of time that we had, but also like not to cast any sort of badness on what happened, because obviously anyone else in a normal situation would love it, but we'd obviously replace that to have Jack here
of course,
at any point, sort of thing. But it's good that we had them memories to sort of remember and look back on. So seeing Jack Wilshere, and we were playing football with him as well. It was good having that sort of connection with Jack.
Yeah, because you're very fortunate with your Twitter page. You got over 100,000 followers on it. So obviously that's how you managed to contact those sort of people, which is still a good thing for them to reach out, no matter how many numbers you get. Like.
And it was just good, obviously, to have them experiences with Jack before. It was obviously we couldn't have them experience with him anymore, which was it was amazing.
When did you find out that he was gonna go?
It was sort of we didn't really find out. It was sort of that it happened in the morning. He just sort of went. He passed. He woke up in the morning, and it was just that's when the time had sort of come, really. It was sort of surreal, because you sort of think he's not in pain anymore. Do you know what I mean? You could see towards the end that he was starting to. It was hurting him still being alive, which is obviously not what you want to see anyone to sort of go through. Never mind like someone. He was like my best friend as well. Obviously, because we had such a big connection with each other.
Yes, and obviously you idolised Ronaldo, and he idolised you in the same way that you did him. How did you feel? Did that make you feel better, or that he felt so highly of you?
Yeah, it obviously made me feel better about the situation, but it helped with me, because it sort of made me think of how he'd want me to be, how he'd want me to still carry on as life, carry on with my life and experience life the way that I should do. Because obviously he idolised me so much. It sounds weird to say, but so sort of trying to achieve the most that I can with the life that I've got here, however long that is. Because you never know what's going to happen.
No, definitely not.
It could be another lockdown tomorrow.
I'll not be saying that. I definitely don't want that.
But you never know exactly what's going to happen, and I guess that's sort of what that situation's shown me as well. Is that you never know what's going to happen in life. And sort of dealing with that at a young age has made me sort of appreciate when you have the good times in life, and to accept them and appreciate them a bit more. And when you have the bad times, to sort of reflect on the good times and to try and make yourself feel the best way you can do in the bad times.
Did you ever deal with it properly at the time, or did you feel like you stepped up to look after your mum and dad?
I wouldn't say my mum and dad needed looking after. I feel like when you're younger, you don't sort of realise what's sort of going on. Obviously, I knew Jack wasn't with us anymore, but it never really hit home as to what he'd obviously been through and how it was going to affect me moving forward. Because obviously, when you're a child, you move in that fast with things. You go to school, you then go to school to college, and then life just carries on in a more of a structured way. So you never really I never really had time to like sit and think about how it had actually affected me till lockdowns and recently, really. But yeah, back then it was sort of I was getting on with things. I was trying to carry on as much as normal as what I could do. But then, like you say, trying to be a bit stronger for my mum and dad and for myself, really, because I knew I had to try and carry on. Obviously, after the funeral and things like that, it sort of it overwhelms you a lot. There's certain things that happen now that even so long after his death, there's specific things that happen a day where you think, oh, I wish Jack was there, or what would he have done in that situation, like when England went to the semi-final. It was sort of like, well, imagine if Jack was there watching it, you know, sat there with you. So it's like, it's just certain situations like that. It's just an example. Like it's you do think and wonder like how it'd be now. What sort of mannerisms would he have? What personality would he have? And it's sort of questions that run through your head sometimes. So it's good to have them good memories that we experienced with the short time that we had left with him, which was good.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's sort of where I started weightlifting. At first, it was like just I'd go out there in the garage. I only had a little multi gym that you see from probably like an Argos catalogue. It was pretty fun. I've still got it now, actually. It's Wider 3000, it's called. It lift every single weight on it now. But back then, obviously, when you're first starting out, it was just getting out there and just going on there for just half an hour, just whilst I was doing my exams, just to, because I found the pressure of the exams would get to me like mentally. So just going out there for half an hour at the start was taking my mind off it. But after the exams then, and obviously starting college life, that was when I really like started picking it up. I'd go after college to Steeltown at the time. I'd go on the bus after college. It was before I got the car, and I'd get the bus about an hour. It was like an hour trip back home, even though my house was only down the road from college. It's like a 20 minute drive, well, 20-minute walk if that. But I had to get the bus in Steeltown, and that's where I sort of went from there up another level. sort of started getting into like your everyday bodybuilding stuff, and I found that when I was, well, even to this day, like when I'm in the gym, it's like I'm in a different world. Like everything, I sort of switch off from absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it's like everything that I think about Jack and about everyday life just goes away after I've been in the gym. And that's where obviously I've started, like, I'm training about 6 years now, and about 4 years in I did my first strongman competition. Sort of didn't really train for it properly either. But I was just sort of doing my normal bodybuilding stuff, thinking that I could sort of go into a different ball game and be able to do well, which I still did. I did all right at the competition. I did come last, but then if people might not know, but like in strongman you have people that have obviously been training years and years, which is where it's not really weight categorised to an extent. So it's difficult to try and find where you fit in. So I've sort of, in the first comp I sort of got a bit washed out. But then again, everything's a learning curve when you're first starting out. Like, even when you play football, like, you're learning the different roles that you have to play.
Yeah, definitely.
If you need to play a different role in the team, then you're learning a completely different side of it. And it's like that with what I was doing. I was going from being bodybuilding based and wanting to look good, but then I found myself, do I really want to get on a stage and wear trunks? I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. Stick the fake talent.
Yeah. I don't know if that's my cup of tea, but I sort of got into like deadlifting and fell in love with just pulling weight off the floor. So my mum was like, she was speaking to the bloke that was organising the strongman competition. He's actually called Richard. He's like a family friend of ours. Well, he is part of our family. So she was speaking to him, and he was like, we're starting this strongman competition. Why didn't you get involved in strongman and start training like a strongman sort of way? So sort of doing strongman events like at the weekends. But now, like, I sort of found myself in between. I didn't know whether, like, over the past 2 years before we've obviously come out of COVID, sort of in between whether or not I wanted to do powerlifting or strongman. And I sort of chose strongman now, and that's why I've signed up to a strongman gym. And I've got my next competition obviously in 3 weeks' time, which is why I've sort of like full on pushed to the strongman side, because it's powerlifting's good if you want to do only 3 events all the time. But I also found that maybe just the atmosphere isn't what I sort of like. And strongman, it's not just because the competition at the minute for me, it's not just about learning, it's about obviously enjoying yourself, because whatever sport you do, you want to enjoy yourself whilst you're doing it. And it's not just everyone supports each other in strongman. It's not just like in powerlifting you're very much on your, like if you're at a competition you're very much like on your own. But strongman, everyone will shout for you, everyone's like on your team, which is why I enjoy it so much.
How do you find it with, because obviously there's people that, like you said, it's a lot bigger than you or a lot heavier than you. Do you find it's more about personal achievement and knowing that you've lifted more than the last time or faster than the last time?
That's sort of what I'm getting at the minute. Sort of trying to beat each target that I set myself, even inside the gym. But then obviously, like this competition that I've entered now is a competition that hopefully I should place quite well in. Obviously, the thing is with strongman, you never know who's going to turn up on the day. It could be 15 people that are miles better than you, and it's just where you've just got to hold your hands up and go, look, I've learned, I've come here, I've performed the best that I can do. It's been like, I think every strongman event you go to, even if you're watching, it's just a good day. So that's the best thing about it. So yeah, going back to your question, it's just like you just see it as getting one step closer to them each time you compete, because you've been training towards that competition. You've learnt more about, because obviously each set of events are different for each competition. You're learning more about different lifts, different techniques. So each time you're adding stuff to like your lifting that you can take with you to next competition, so then it's not like a first time you're doing that event sort of thing. So yeah, every time you learn, like getting closer towards the next.
So ultimately you want to be what, Scunthorpe's strongest man or what?
One day I'd like to probably, I'm sort of looking at trying to do like the under 90 kilo sort of strongman, just purely because they'll be like, not that I'm going to be anywhere near the top level at the minute, but it'll be more, hopefully more geared towards weights that I can achieve. And hopefully that, because obviously like you say, not only do you have people that weigh more than you, you've also got people that will be better at different events than you because of their height, or I'm not the tallest of people. So realistically, can I ever see myself competing on like the actual world's strongest man? Probably not, but they do under 90 kilos or like under like weight categorised, where you can also do like Britain's, worlds. So if ever I can get to that level, even those guys are deadlifting like 320, 350 kilo. I think the highest deadlift pulled by an under 90 kilo has been nearly 400 kilos. So if I can get even close to that, that would be like amazing for me. Like just to not only prove that, like coming through everything that I've been through, but just doing it to just prove that anyone can put anything they put their mind to.
Yeah, definitely.
And just focusing all your mind on something can take you to the next level.
Yeah, definitely, because sometimes your mind can be the most powerful thing you've got, can't it? So
like it's strange, like if you go, depending on what your mindset's in on a certain day, you could make 200 kilo feel like 400 kilo, or you could make the weight feel like it's literally like nothing. Just through what you're doing within your mind. It's really where lockdown hit me the most, really, because obviously I couldn't go to the gym or do the things I do in my everyday life. which was where I sort of things to do with my brother sort of circulated. And I sort of, obviously as I've grown older, like I was saying earlier, I sort of realised how unnatural and unnormal the things that I went through when I was a kid, and what I saw when I was a kid, how realistically I should have never really seen that happen to my brother. But sort of learning in lockdown, it made me sort of go back to them times. But the thing that I've done so well from when I was obviously the events of like the funeral and things like that happened. The things that I used to do so well was I used to go back to the happy times. But the things that I didn't do so well during lockdown was obviously looking at the happy times instead of the bad times that happened. And I found myself sort of in a bit of a rut, going back to the bad times and sort of reliving them, and sort of thinking that everything happened with Jack was a bad thing that happened, which it was, but obviously he's not here anymore. But so it is difficult, to sort of live without him, but also like you've got to sort of understand that he's still with you, not as much as he's not with you in person, he's still with you in your heart.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is probably, obviously I'd rather have him here with me, but
yeah, of course,
sometimes you just can't get everything you want sometimes in life.
Well, thanks for coming on today, Josh. I hope you go on to achieve a lot of things in strongman competitions, as obviously you've put yourself through a lot of things to get there. So thanks for coming on today, mate.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you so much for watching. For more videos like this, please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and to find out who my future guests will be, please follow my Instagram and my Facebook pages.